Hello, and thank you for tuning into Answers from the Lab, where we share Mayo Clinic knowledge and advancements on the state of testing and science from laboratory leaders and the people who are making it happen behind the scenes. I'm Dr. Bobbi Pritt, the chair of the Division of Clinical Microbiology in the Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathology at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. With me today is Dr. Bill Morice, the chair of the Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathology at Mayo Clinic and the president of Mayo Clinic Laboratories. This is our weekly discussion with Dr. Morice, in which we learn about updates in the field of laboratory medicine and pathology. Well, hi, Bill. Welcome back to the United States.
Yeah, thanks, Bobbi. It's good to be back. Yes, getting used to traveling again.
I know. Gosh, you've been traveling a lot. I've been traveling a lot. You just came back from Switzerland, right?
That's correct. And I was also in Seattle within the last 2 weeks. I've gone both directions, east and west.
Yeah, same with me. I just came back from South Korea, where I was doing international lab inspections for the College of American Pathologists. But then just last weekend, I was in Chicago. So travel is definitely opening up. And unfortunately, at the same time, so is respiratory virus season.
Yep, I know. Yeah, I thought about that a lot as I was traveling. Number one, because I did contract an illness around one of those travels, whether it was during that travel or not. But then after I got back and told people I was not feeling well, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, we're not feeling great either. And there's been a big gathering here or there. And it just made me realize, number one, there is this great energy for people to get back together. I was in Zurich actually for the Roche global meeting, Roche Diagnostics global meeting, where they're bringing all the people together. It was the first time in 3 years that they had done that. So I think there's a great, anytime you're at one of these gatherings, there's always a great energy of people really so happy to be back together. Mm-hmm. But at the same point in time, to your point, we still have respiratory pathogens that are out there. We always will. And now we're seeing kind of cases going back up of an influenza and RSV, I think, respiratory syncytial virus. Both of those cases have really been going up, I think, in the US, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had Dr. Vinegar on recently and talking about influenza. He was predicting at that point that our influenza season might be bad based on what we saw in the Southern Hemisphere. And it does look like that's playing out. Our southern states right now are seeing a lot of cases, but we've had cases here in Minnesota. But then RSV has been higher than anticipated. And that can be quite serious in young people and certain adults with different conditions. And then you add on top of that, of course, the fact that COVID is still here with us. And in fact, I have some friends and colleagues that recently got COVID for the first time who thought they were immune, but it looks like they were not. So I think that there's many reasons to continue having respiratory virus protections when you're out and about and in large groups.
Yep. Well, first of all, I mean, think about getting vaccinated. Just go back to the flu vaccine, and now there is the bivalent COVID booster, which is out there, which has more of the Omicron-specific spike protein as part of it, or peptide. So there's that to consider. And the other is just to your point, look, that these are still around, and there's things that are happening I think of it almost as aftershocks from COVID, particularly like in younger people. The question is, now they've been in multiple maybe seasons, or at least one season where they didn't get as much exposure as they might have normally because of isolation and distancing and masking and all those really good practices. So we don't really understand completely sort of the human backdrop that all these respiratory viruses are now coming back and being spread. Clearly travel is a big part of it, and travel is back, and getting together in groups is back, and that's a big part of the transmission. So I think it's just important for people to keep those things in mind as we kind of get back together life. Yeah,
I agree completely. One thing I will mention that's somewhat related is that people have been talking about Ebola recently. There's an outbreak in Uganda. That is not a respiratory virus. And Dr. Vinegar and others have clarified that for us on Twitter. If it was a respiratory virus, instead of having hundreds of cases, we would be having thousands and tens of thousands of cases. So that's a completely different virus, but another outbreak that is going on right now and quite important.
Yeah, and I think another one where going back to where diagnostics become important. I know that there's now again talk of, because this was when we dealt with, I guess, probably like 2016, 17, early in my tenure as department chair, where we were thinking about setting up a special room in the ER and having a diagnostic available for someone with a hemorrhagic fever for concerns of Ebola. And I think I saw another article recently about needing to build the infrastructure for Ebola testing, just like we needed for monkeypox. So number one is people be mindful. Think if you're not feeling well, think about wearing masks. Think those things are all continue to be helpful in terms of preventing you from getting sick, or if you are sick, spreading it to other people. But then also we have, I think from a lab side, we're going to continue to be pressed to think about, number one, what are we doing in our labs to help our patients be prepared for these, to understand what they might have, and then also really helping to continue to guide and provide input on things that are not happening in labs, like antigen testing, right? And I think that we'll continue to see, if it's a really tough flu season, and we might see more and more of a push for people to have at-home diagnostics, which I know is something you've been interested in for a long time. But you could see where that could really, if it's a rough flu season, a lot of people are out sick, that we'll see more and more interest in sort of the self-testing.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. I think you're spot on. And I think that it just emphasizes the importance of laboratory medicine, pathologists, laboratorians, scientists who are the subject matter experts on these tests and really are the ones that need to get out there. Like what we're doing, everyone who's listening, should be out there talking about the science and giving good advice to people. Testing is going to be essential, and whether it's done in the laboratory setting or at home, I think that we should be part of that process of guiding the testing, because there's some good tests and some not so good tests that are out there. And as you said, with Ebola, with influenza, it really goes to show the importance of laboratory testing, because if you don't have the test, you really are kind of in the dark as to what you're treating. Influenza, SARS-CoV-2, RSV, these are 3 different viruses, but they could have overlapping clinical symptoms, but they're treated completely differently. Different drugs, different therapies, different vaccines. So testing is key here.
Yeah, and even different risks for individuals, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So they're different diseases. So I think the take home from this week is to stay mindful, right? That people do look to us as examples as well, right? To strike that right balance. It's great to be back together, but to develop some personal best practices that you can share with others, which I think we do need going forward. Stay engaged. Testing is going to continue to be an important topic as we manage this. And we didn't even touch on it today, but a lot happening in DC, both with SALSA and VALID, that are probably they're going to be important topics for the lame duck legislative session that'll happen after the midterm elections. And then, and stay informed. I think those are really, stay safe, stay engaged, stay informed, and help inform others. So speaking of informing others, my understanding that your alter ego at Parasite Gal hit a pretty important milestone, social media milestone here.
Yeah, I guess this does fall into informing others. Many people know I have a blog that I have been doing since 2007, and I just hit my 700th case today. So that's exciting for me. And yeah, my blog is educational. I do it just for education and fun, and I try to have cases that help interest, but also educate people. So yeah, it's exciting for me, exciting milestone.
Yeah, well, it's great. And you've really interacted with and helped. Who knew there could be 700 parasite cases that could be out there, right? You knew.
Oh, there's many more to come.
Yeah, great, I think. But and then your ability to connect with people through that platform and really use it for something that's really good and beneficial is great. It's inspiring for me personally and for all of us. So great to see. And I have to say also, I did catch some grief in comparative Twitter handles on radio with Dan Barrero when he's like, well, why does at Parasite Gal have such a cool handle and you're just at Morice MD Ph.D. very boring. So I pale in comparison in that domain.
Too funny. Well, yeah, it's our alter egos, right? Well, thank you for noticing that, Bill. And yeah, we'll just keep blogging and talking and videoing away, and hopefully keep spreading good messages and education and science to our listeners and viewers.
That's right. And even maybe now, as we kind of get through this, you and I have talked about some other things that we could do through social media, through Twitter as a platform or something else that might even be live and interactive. So who knows? Maybe we can do something like that. Put that on the agenda for the coming year.
Yeah, we could do a live tweet fest.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be exciting.
Excellent.
All right, we'll put it on the calendar.
All right. Until next time. See you later.
Until next time. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Answers from the Lab. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to tune in every Thursday and every other Tuesday.